Chapter 29. It was nearly 8 a.m. when Emmett finally dragged himself out of bed, tiptoeing past his son's bedroom and down to the kitchen. Flicking the kettle on, his eyes landed on Nicholas's school report cards, which had been left neatly stacked on the table since Monday night. He quickly flipped through them, laughing at the generous comments about his boy's love of art and sport, and his eagerness to take on leadership roles during group activities. My little bossy boots, Emmett smiled, pushing the report cards away. He'd really hoped he would have this investigation wrapped up by now, if not for the sake of the victim's grieving relatives, then for his own family. How many more milestones was he going to miss? He sighed, pouring himself a mug of instant coffee. It had been a particularly rough night, with Cindy's intermittent sobs echoing throughout the darkness. And even when she had managed to sleep, he hadn't. He slumped down at the table. His wife had been so proud of her new photography job, and he didn't like to think that she might deteriorate back to where she had been in the months after Nicholas's birth. Teary, lonely, and utterly depressed. How could they just terminate her position like that? The buzzing of his phone interrupted this train of thought. Hello, Detective Corbin speaking. He took a sip of coffee as he waited for the unknown caller to respond. Oh, Detective Cruz. Good to hear from you. He'd meant to phone Jackie yesterday to see how the investigation into Owen Peters' missing girlfriend was going. We've done a full sweep of the area between the medical clinic and her home in Moonee Ponds, and we found a good deal of security footage. The detective's words were slow and measured. We know that Charlotte got within about 1 kilometre of her house before disappearing. Oh? Yes, so we're wondering if she met up with someone local. Right. Emmett clicked his tongue, considering this. The thing is... Jackie's voice lowered, as though someone might be listening in. Mr. Peters mentioned some concerns about a former partner of Charlotte's, but he was quite vague on the details and a little sheepish about it all. So I wondered if you might know more about that. Emmett hesitated. Owen hadn't mentioned anything to him about an ex-boyfriend. But then again, they'd never got into any intimate details. No, he said. I'm afraid I can't help you with that at all. What do you mean by sheepish? He was just a bit cagey about it, almost as though he was feeling guilty or embarrassed. I wondered if Charlotte might have been scared of this man. All Owen said was that he lived around the area and was unemployed. Okay, but he wasn't able to give you a name? No. He says he never met the man, and only knew snippets about his life from what Charlotte told him. What's your gut feel? Emmett asked. Down the phone, she heard the detective exhale. I really don't like to presume anything. She hesitated. But I will say that I'm extremely keen to know who this former partner is, especially if he lives nearby. Given we know that Charlotte almost made it home, identifying him could be critical. Absolutely. I'm actually heading to Mr. Peters' house now. Hopefully I can pry more information out of him, although he doesn't seem that comfortable opening up to me. After agreeing to keep in touch, Emmett hung up, staring numbly across the kitchen. Maybe passing the case over was a mistake. Owen had trusted him. He clearly wasn't as comfortable with Jackie. Grabbing some clothes from the laundry and splashing his face with cold water, Emmett scribbled a quick message to his wife. Enjoy the day off. You deserve it. Let's look for new job opportunities together later this week. XO. Then he stepped out of the front door and headed to his car. At the first intersection, he flicked the right indicator on, just as he always did, before suddenly changing his mind. Owen Peters lived in Moonee Ponds, only a couple of suburbs further out from the city. The detour wouldn't cost him that much time, and he was certain that Jackie would appreciate the support. It wouldn't hurt to pay a quick visit. Heading away from the city, the traffic was light, and Emmett made good time, racing past the bright architecture of the Royal Children's Hospital, beyond the entry to the Tullamarine Freeway, and along the now very familiar Mount Alexander Road. He slowed as he neared the grotty chicken shop where Stephen had met the teenager with Rosemary Norman's phone. What was his name again? Emmett bit his lower lip. Samir, that's right. As he passed the turn-off of the small building that housed the Flemington police station, he remembered the video they'd found on Samir's phone, and the way the teenager had crumpled to the floor when questioned. I wonder whether his friends were ever charged over the assault. Emmett pulled up outside a block of 4 units. Peering from his window, he tried to read the numbers on the letterboxes. Owen lived in Unit 1D. It must be the one right up the back. After typing a quick message to his colleagues to let them know he'd be late, he left the car and looked up and down the street. Jackie Cruz hadn't yet arrived. Down the rear of the cobbled communal driveway, he found Owen's flat. Stepping over the multiple pairs of dirty sneakers, an occupational hazard no doubt, Emmett knocked firmly on the door. As he waited, he shifted impatiently from foot to foot. Could the teacher be asleep? He knocked again. When there was still no answer, Emmett reluctantly left the front porch, following the property down the side, and noticed there was no car. He must have left for work already. A feeling of foolishness overtook him. Nicholas had complained bitterly about his favourite teacher being away the other day, so Emmett had just assumed Owen would be home. Damn. He turned to head back, when he noticed the windows all along the wall beside him were slightly ajar. How odd. He stepped closer. They were only open a couple of centimetres or so, but it was enough for a would-be thief to leverage further. Why would Owen have done that? He followed the windows along to the back, resisting the urge to close them from the outside. Against the back fence there was a small courtyard with synthetic grass, on which someone had hopefully positioned a plastic cricket wicket alongside a storage shed. Emmett shook his head as he imagined children trying to play in the tiny space. They'd be better off just heading to one of the public parks nearby. Mr. Peters? He pressed his face to the gap in the back window on the off chance the teacher hadn't noticed his knocking. Are you home? He tried again. It's Emmett Corbin, Nicholas's dad. I just came to... He stopped, his nose twitching. What is that smell? He sniffed again. Toxic. Placing both hands against the glass, he managed to force the window a little further open so that he could see just inside the back of the house. A worn leather couch was pressed against the wall, a coffee table, spilled wine, a broken vase. Emmett felt his skin tingle. Something wasn't right. Mr. Peters? He called out, moving to the rear door and knocking loudly. Are you okay? He tried the handle. It was locked. Turning to the courtyard, Emmett looked around for something to use to jimmy the back window fully open. His eyes landed on the shed. Surely Owen keeps some tools in there. The door was secured by a sliding bolt, but not locked, and Emmett was thankful it opened easily. What on earth? He stepped back, clamping a hand over his mouth. The odour escaping from the shed was far worse than whatever chemicals he noticed inside the house. It was overwhelming. Peering into the darkness, it took Emmett a moment to see clearly. Then his eyes focused on the loop of heavy rope and the tarpaulin. His heart stopped. The blue plastic material was wrapped tightly in a bundle. Just a stray lock of light brown hair could be seen poking out. It can't be. Stepping closer, Emmett crouched on the ground, staying just long enough to be certain of what he was seeing. Then he hurried out, allowing himself a moment to lean against the back fence, doing his best to stifle the insistent gagging reflex in his throat. Pulling out his phone, he hurried back down the side of the house, almost colliding with the figure rushing towards him. Detective Corbin! Jackie's cheeks were flushed. I thought I heard a noise. What are you doing here? You won't believe it. Emmett started, unable to accept that what he was about to say was true. You know how you said you'd found out that Charlotte almost made it home? Before she disappeared? Yes. Well? Emmett licked his lips, his mouth utterly dry. It looks like Charlotte did make it home. And then Owen killed her.